The Hema is an infested burst fire assault rifle that was introduced in Update 19.5 the Glast Gambit on the 23rd of December 2016. The weapon can be acquired through the in-game market for 225 platinum at minimum, or by researching the weapon in the biolab at your clan dojo after researching the Torrid and Mutagen mass before it. While the platinum price of the weapon was normal, the research costs quickly sparked discussion and confusion within the Warframe community. The reason behind the discussion was simple. The Hema's research costs were expensive, as they entailed the following resources for a clan: 5,000 credits, 10,000 plastids, 45,000 nanospores, 50 neuroids, and 5,000 mutagen samples. On top of the base information, resource costs for the clans scale based on their clan's tier. A Shadow clan can contain 30 players and requires 15,000 mutagen samples. A Storm clan can hold 100 players and requires 50,000. A Mountain clan can hold 300 players and requires 150,000 mutagen sample. And a Moon clan can hold 1,000 players and requires 500,000 mutagen sample. A Shadow clan has a 3 times multiplier, a Storm clan has a 10 times multiplier, a Mountain clan has a 30 times multiplier, and a Moon clan has a 100 times multiplier based off of the Ghost clan's cost. And while the credits, plastids, nanospores, and neuroids were a commonly stocked resource for veterans within the community, the mutagen samples were not. The resource exclusively drops from either the Orokin Derelict or Eris, unlike its family members, the Detonite, Ampule, and Fieldron samples, which drop from 6 different locations across the star chart. Detonite, Ampule, and Fieldron samples are also required to complete research in the Chemical Lab and Energy Labs, and can drop in quantities of 1 to 3, where the mutagen samples drop in quantities of 1. These numbers, of course, don't take into account loot manipulating bonuses, such as boosters and a Smedekovat's Charm buff. If you want a history lesson on how extreme the change was for mutagen samples, I will leave a link to a post made by TGDM, the creator of Tennoclock News, in the description down below. On top of that, the Derelict had no significant rewards tied to it outside of relics and corrupted mods. The Derelict is also tied off from the game's matchmaking system, and therefore players would have to use the recruitment chat feature to find individuals to play with if their clan members were offline or inactive. A number of clan warlords also had to remove players from their clans to make the grind easier for themselves, and some players even left their inactive or solo clans in search for those that were more active or for a clan that had the Hema completed. The high count of the mutagen samples required was also an extreme increase compared to previous biolab research, those being the Synapse, which required a total of 65 mutagen sample, and the Jin Sentinel that required 60. At the time of discussion, most of the DE staff were on their holidays, and players believed the costs were due to a bug or were due to a human error, and that costs would be decreased in the new year when staff returned. However, players were met with a response on the 23rd of December of 2016 through the Warframe forums by D.E. Taylor. Her statement follows: "Hey Tenno, sorry for the delay in a reply on this matter. We are running with a smaller crew this holiday season, and there is a lot to handle today. Let's get to it. The requirements for the Hema are intentional. The resource costs, the mutagen samples in particular, are set to encourage clan participation and collaboration in investing for this new weapon. It is clear to us you are eager in doing so in the most efficient manner possible, so let's break it down. To meet the mutagen sample requirement, each clan member would need to contribute 500 samples. Depending on what kind of squad you run with, the requirement can be met after running a few Orokin Derelict defense missions, especially if you have a few Necroses to help. Many of you may already have the required samples, if not more, already in your inventory. Ultimately, clan research is meant to take cooperation and effort. It won't necessarily be something that can be done with resources you have lying around already. Although we do not intend to make any changes, we appreciate constructive and respectful feedback." With D.E. Taylor's statement outlining that the costs were intentional and that no changes were planned, the community continued to share their concerns, and in Devstream 85 on the 6th of January 2017, their concerns were met with a response by D.E. Steve after Rebecca relayed the following question.
Alright, our next thing that is on the must address before 2017 moves a second beyond is what will be done about the Hema resource costs? I guess their future proofing. Maybe adding more mutagen sample drop locations, or increasing the drop stacks to have 2 or 3 per drop. So this is the general phrasing of the question about the HEMA.
Yes, and when I was Sunday streaming, was interesting. I was talking about that, and you know, we grabbed the stats and we looked at the kind of caches that people have. Our goal is never that the weapon is popped and you guys have stockpiles and you don't play the game to get it. Our goal is always, there's a bit of a goal there. But I can totally understand the sticker shock.
Yes.
Because the resource accumulation meant there was quite a jump.
Yes.
Too much of a jump. But there were people in my stream, which we are well aware of, that said, well, don't change it. I worked my ass off to get it.
It depleted my entire years of mutagen.
And those people don't. You are stuck with a rock and a hard place, I think, for those situations. So I think what we're talking about is about kind of raising the floor a bit in terms of those drop rates, but we will be leaving the cost as is.
Right. And I think, I mean, it's...
With apologies to those that are shocked, or apologies that some people might be in large clans that don't have as many active members, and they might need to clear some out and that sort of thing. But we will try to find a better balance there for you guys.
Yes, and I think it's interesting because the precedent of, the perception of weapons being the easiest thing to make for free when they're released is pretty... Like, there's definitely outliers, but typically when we release a new weapon, as a veteran with stockpiles, the first thing I do is grab the blueprint and... Like, there's not really a lot of friction there for me. And then all of a sudden, when these outliers show up where there is a lot of friction and it's
and there were two other weapons as well that were really...
Like, the Javelok had a bit of grind. I got it pretty quickly, and so did a few of... One of them required the Kogaki, so it was definitely a mixed bag, but I could do it all instantly. And then the HEMA was the one... Usually when we do clan research, you have to... The wait wall is the time wall, because you just have to wait 3 days at research as you get it. But this one had all of those things at once, which is a bit of an outlier in the sense of getting the weapon if you do the free path. And I think that's what it comes down to, is where that fits in.
Especially for the larger clans, I can appreciate the pain. But we're going to leave it as is because people have done it.
This response would showcase Dee's thoughts on the HEMA, that being that the weapon is now a goal for players and clans to acquire, and a trophy piece for those who have already done so. It should be noted that within the same question line, Steve did state that they weren't ready to slam the door on future changes to mutagen sample drop rates or the acquisition methods.
But as I said, we're not slamming the door in the face of changing that drop rate a bit to kind of ease the pain and make a compromise between those that really did step up and earn it.
Yes. It's going to be a badge of pride. You can say you've done it. You've seen, and I mean, obviously we'll be cognizant to not go that extreme again in the future, which is the other important thing.
DE Danielle later released a recap of Steve's comments on the 12th of January 2017, linking to and referencing the aforementioned statements made by Steve and Taylor. However, she also highlighted Steve's comment in Devstream 85, with a recap message reading, "Discussions about drop adjustments may be had to find a better balance between requirement and attainability." Her post also ended with the following message: "You are welcome to comment on any potential changes to drop rates once the information is available." A number of dev streams before, during, and after the HEMA's release featured the DE-hosted second stream Warframe podcast. That included DE members, usually Rebecca, asking Warframe partners questions about content that had been revealed or discussed during the previous dev stream. Episode 8 of the second stream podcast featured DE Steve and discussions about Devstream 85. Rebecca asked the Warframe partners involved, Momor, Xenogellion, and AGGP, about their thoughts on the HEMA's research requirements. I will leave a link to the podcast episode with a timestamp in the description down below if you want to hear the responses by those partners. However, for the various other comments from other partners, their opinions are of course in their own HEMA videos. Continuing the discussion on the 19th of January 2017, a player commented in reply to the update 19.7 patch notes that there was still no fix for the HEMA research problem. DE Taylor did respond to that post, saying that the Devstream team would be discussing the HEMA's research costs in the upcoming Devstream. On the 20th of December 2017, Devstream 86 went live, and as promised, the HEMA was brought up in discussion, with Steve issuing comments on the mutagen sample drops with the following response.
Steve, why don't you talk about the mutagen stuff from last stream while I'm getting the Tenogen stuff ready?
The mutagen stuff?
Remember last stream you're like, we will look at it.
Oh, right.
We did look at it, and if you go to the derelicts, the drop rate is many, many times an order of magnitude greater than the rest of the game. And so I did get this question a lot on Twitter as well, and are we going to reduce the cost? No, we're not. Mostly out of respect for those that actually worked on it and got it, and that put us kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Yep.
So I'm sorry for the sticker shock on that one, but I urge you to go to the derelicts because it's raining
That's where you're supposed to go. Yep.
Yep. It's a great place to go for it. And yeah, I think if we could have done it over again, I think we probably would have upped it slower than that. But I did hear a lot of contrary positive feedback about how that made clans work together again, and that really set in stone the positivity that I heard about that really reinforced our goals for this year.
His response, as shown, was that no changes would be made and that players would have to go to the derelict if they want a sufficient farm, as it's quote-unquote raining there. Steve repeated his previous comments and the comments made in Devstream 86 to two different users on Twitter, the first on the 20th of January 2017 and the second on the 21st of January 2017, cementing that no changes will ever come to the Hema or Mutagen samples. He also made the following comments on his livestream.
Have earned it, and they don't deserve for us to go, just kidding, it's less now. So I think that's the problem with the live game. There's so many upsides, but the downsides are when you make a mistake, if you don't correct it within an instant, then you create tons and tons of problems. And I would say internally at DE, we probably run reparation scripts, once a week, maybe sometimes a couple times in a week, which really sucks.
The second last comment about the Hema came from DE Aiden on the 20th of May 2017, commenting that he does feel the struggle players feel, but the Hema cost will not be changed. The final comment about the Hema came through an interview between DE Rebecca and IGN reporter Tom Marks after Rebecca spoke at the Game Developers Conference in 2018. For context, Rebecca's panel was, as IGN put it, about how more grind doesn't mean more profits. Her comment reads, "The Hema is a weapon that has a very notoriously grindy acquisition that players think we don't change because of the platinum it is making us. When I looked at the release of that weapon with everything else that released at the time, it actually sold less than the easier to get content, so it doesn't even have a correlation to a larger platinum income." Outside of developer comments, there is a dedicated subreddit, r/researchedHema, where clans that have of course researched the Hema share screenshots of their accomplishments. And I would like to highlight Forfy's parody Hema trailer that released on the 23rd of January 2017 that showcases the experience of farming the weapon. Anyway, that does conclude this video. Hopefully I informed you on the Hema situation, the history of the Hema, and all the statements that DE have produced regarding the Hema. Now, if I do have to share my personal opinions on the Hema, all I have to say is that they really should just buff the Mutagen sample, drop to be 1 to 3, similar to the Detonite ampules and the Fieldron samples. That way it's balanced between the family members of research items. But if it's not that, just expand where you can get the Mutagen samples from outside of the Orokin derelict, and maybe even buff the Eris drop chance. But as we've seen from all of the statements made in this video, that's not going to happen. So that is the history of the Hema. Hopefully I kept you informed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of Warframe History or This Week in Warframe.